Well, Peter, you might be the first person on this planet that has ever shut me up for this long. Good old Heraclitus, I tell you, that wild and crazy guy.
If I came to you and I gave you $10,000 for 20% of the company.
Deal.
Yeah.
So, is that a verbal?
Younger than us, sorry to say, Joseph.
What, younger than 20?
Joe, we're just trying to help you because clearly you've lost control of the conversation.
I never, you know what? With all due respect, I never had control of the situation. Doesn't mean I'm gone. What doesn't kill me makes you stronger.
Look at you. You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're insane.
Well, hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to CoronaTV. It is the last episode of the week. And if I may say so myself, just my favorite. I love getting together with old friends, new friends, previous guests that we've done now 215 215 guests. Some of them have come back twice, like Mark Schaefer, like Lodro, Rinsler, and then like Leslie today. Leslie hasn't been a previous guest, but she is part of our family, our extended family, in our beautiful Zoom after show. So I'm trying different things right now, which is basically bring them on straight away. Let him be co-host. Bring on Nick Westergaard, whether he knew he was coming on or not. Leslie Laredo, Kuda Biza, and Tom Morris, and say, welcome to the show, guys. Well, you're co-hosting now.
Thank you.
I will not exploit this power.
Did you know you were not exploiting. Did you know you were co-hosting?
No, but I've got about 12 questions I want to ask you right away.
Well, I can still mute you, remember. Just remember. So
can we mute you back?
You can try.
It's a silent show.
You can try a silent show. Exactly. Some people say I do my finest work when I'm silent. So we have 4 of the best. And I thought we would start off with a little icebreaker question for you guys. So Nick Westergaard, you can kick us off. Your best movie ever. What's the best movie? Your best movie of all time?
Fargo.
Oh.
Easy enough.
Wow.
How about you, Leslie?
Well, it's actually one I just remember the most because I was young when I saw it. I was so impressed by it. Was Dr. Zhivago.
Oh, wow.
There's a long story behind why I picked that, but that's one.
Mr. Kuda Biza.
It definitely has to be RoboCop because I was still in Zimbabwe and was the first movie I watched on our new color TV. So it always has that impression. So RoboCop, it has to be for me.
That's so weird because I'm fairly certain Tom Morris's best movie of all time is RoboCop as well.
Well, I was going to say that, but now I have to come up with something else. No, you guys, those were serious picks. I'm going to look so silly when I say The Princess Bride.
I mean, that's up there for me. And come on, co-host, what about me? Did you ask?
Yeah, what about you?
Well, thank you for asking. It is a tie between Highlander and My Cousin Vinny.
Oh.
It's a toss-up. It's a real toss-up. And The Untouchables is up there. Princess Bride is up there too.
Princess Bride's a perfect movie.
Yeah.
If I may do my one of my lines from that, which is, "Welcome to the pit of welcome to the pit of despair." Anyway, but I digress because we have serious things to discuss, like the fact that I'm leaving Facebook and moving to YouTube. Tom, you don't even need to be on YouTube today.
Yeah, this is not a challenging day for me. I just sit here and enjoy myself, not fight with YouTube.
So Glenn, by the way, says the year of living dangerously. So I feel that might have been 2020, by the way. Is this reality programming? I'm not sure. So starting next week, if you are watching on Facebook, like my mom is, like Glenn is, like Stephen is, you will not see the show on Facebook next week. Maybe you'll see it. I don't know, whatever. But just come on over to YouTube. Also, for those of you, I will keep on flogging this on you until you take me up on my offer. I want to see who is the first person to buy a signed copy of the book using my branded cryptocurrency. Who is the first company that wants a 5-minute sales lady-esque piece of promotional content that we create together, or wants a super-sized shout-out, or one of my new ones is now, and you can get this from my linktree, a 30-minute mentoring, coaching, strategic advisory brainstorming session, How the Mighty Have Fallen, Nick Westergaard, for $30. That's all it takes. But that's the discounted price of first mover advantage, is it not?
Yeah,
I would say so. I would say so. And you're also leading with the money, with your face on it. So
exactly. What was the Yogi Berra line? Cash, which is just as good as money. What was the line? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close.
Something like that. But let's get to the real serious stuff. This Tom Morris. Let's look at your background. Where is it? Move the camera.
Oh,
I can't see it in your background.
You my background, what? By all this stuff?
No, where is the beautiful painting, the Absinthe painting? Today is National Absinthe Day.
Oh, is it? Well, let's go.
There it is.
There you go.
It is National Absinthe Day. So cheers to the Green Fairy.
Cheers to the Green Fairy.
And may she continue to inspire us to dream, to imagine, and to transcend the mundane and the mediocre. How about that?
That's beautiful.
All right. Well, now speaking of transcending the mundane and the mediocre, I have 4 of the best guests today. They have transcended. You are the epitome of transcendence. But we don't need to see you guys because we can see you guys. How about next week? Monday is not meant to be a surprise that I'm revealing to you. Actually, unfortunately, my guest that was due to come on a Monday had a death in the family and had to cancel. So I'm feverishly looking to replace them. But Keith Reynolds Jennings on Tuesday, Liz Plank on Wednesday, Julia McCoy on Thursday, and then on Friday, Mr. Brian Kramer, Trisha Ben, Christina De Giacomo. It's a beautiful philosopher 1-2 punch with Morris and De Giacomo and Mr. David Ormano. So I'm excited for that. The final stuff for today, and then we can get into the meat and potatoes, aka Mr. Nick Westergaard, is Facebook birthday. So if you see your name there, Gavin Levinson, Alan Moore, Janine Sola Leopard, you guys recognize anyone there? These are my Facebook friends. Want to do any shout outs? Anyone come to mind there? How about on LinkedIn? You know anyone there? Surely my friends are your friends.
You know a lot of people, Joseph.
You do, yeah.
It's very impressive.
I mean, most of the people, unfortunately, on LinkedIn, I don't know who they are at all. But if you are on this list, then I know you as well. Anyway, happy birthday. But enough about them. Let's focus on you. It is a bumper-packed edition of the show. We're going to Clubhouse afterwards. You can get the link on my Linktree. Just go to linktree.com or linktree.ee/jaffejuice and come and hang out with us on Clubhouse. First and foremost, up is Mr. Nick Westergaard. Nick, your 5 minutes. We want to know what is on your mind. Starts now.
What is on my mind starting right now? Well, I think back to when we first began our talk. When I came on, it was Thanksgiving, and it's hard to believe that we are yet again in a window of another social network arriving. And I've been thinking a lot about this kind of history of social platforms. And over the past couple of decades, we've had, with LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and then there was a burst of time where it seems like we were always tracking and playing with the new thing. Yeah, I'm going to bring up some of these. They're going to be funny, but things like Google Plus, and we were excited to get our Google Plus invite. And it sort of seems a little bit like we're back to that mindset that really I feel like I hadn't been in a few years, because it's come along a lot slower. Like TikTok has been here for a little bit. So like our new social network muscles, or at least my new social network muscles, were a little creaky. It's like when you have a break in your time as a runner and you get back out and you're like, oh, that's going to hurt. And, learning what's new and remembering kind of how to kick the tires and what's important in considering something new and different has been interesting to get back into. And I've had a lot of fun doing it. For Simpsons fans out there, I had a little bit of the kind of the Grandpa Simpson meme of old man yells at cloud, because at first I was a little jarred by Clubhouse and was begrudgingly working to figure it out. So that's, I'd say, what's been the big thing on my mind is Clubhouse, new networks, what stays and what doesn't.
Well, let's pick up on what stays and what doesn't. You are a professor of marketing. You teach marketing, as do I. And what we've learned through the history of media is the new medium does not necessarily replace the old one. So the killer, just video killed the radio star. I mean, we've seen all of these models, but they do occupy specific places. And I agree with you. I mean, we used to always go to South by Southwest and wait to see what's the new big thing. And for sure, and I mean, you would testify to this as well. Well, let me ask you the question. Do you think Clubhouse, and now in the, Twitter Spaces and all of these copycats, do you think that they would have grown as quickly as they did if we were not in a global pandemic?
That's a big question. And I think that's one of the I think Clubhouse represents a conversion of a lot of different trends. Some of them were long-term and were here anyways, like our preference for audio content. You look at the steady rise of podcasting. You look at big players buying up assets in the space like Spotify. So I feel like that was already there. But I think other things, when you look at the pandemic, the fact that we can't all be going over to a panel this morning and seeing Ann Handley, Mitch Joel, Joe Pulizzi talk about email newsletters. And that's where I was this morning. And it did kind of have that big, big conference hallway panel, smart people in the audience experience, where someone else comes up and asks a question and you're like, geez, Carla Johnson's here.
Yeah, and in many respects, they are filling it's almost like every day is conference day. It's the 365-day conference. And then there's a lot of sales going on, a lot of hustling and huckstering. And then you've got this third leg, which is just incredible vulnerability and sharing and sensitivity and empathy and connection, and that's been interesting too. What do the rest of you think about it?
What's interesting to me is that I went the other day to sign on to Twitter. I guess I was feeling masochistic. And before Twitter came up, there was a blue square on the screen. Join Spaces, where you have the microphone. And I thought, wow, there was Skype, and then there was Zoom, and then there were, like 12 formats of virtual communication like this. And now it's like, it's not the Me Too movement, it's the Us Too movement, that we can do this too. Everybody wants their audio Clubhouse, chat room, spaces, as Twitter calls it. So it is interesting to look at that proliferation. When something new comes along, then there's this explosion of imitators, and there's a shakeout. Okay, is it going to be first to market that prevails? In this case, I guess Clubhouse. Or will it be who gets it best, who gets it right? We'll see.
There is no doubt that there's always a land grab, and it is the Wild West. And for those of us that have been in digital before, we've seen it before. We kind of know what we think we know maybe what happens next or how it all ends. But for sure, you know, there is, I think Mark Cuban has one that he's launched or launching. It's crazy. I would certainly, I would love to be Clubhouse. I would probably hate to be anyone else competing with them, to be honest. What do you think, Kuda?
Yeah, what I think is that there's gonna be a lot of activity in terms of consolidation down the road, right? Because I think we've kind of like seen this before. You know, Facebook ended up acquiring Instagram and so forth and so forth. So I think it's an exciting time for like entrepreneurs to come up with their ideas and new platforms. But I think what will then end up happening is they'll raise money and then they'll, you know, build it to a certain point. But the utility will start consolidating to maybe one or two players, and then you'll see some acquisition from the big guys happening. So I think the big guys are actually happy to see these new types of platforms come out because they can sit aside, see how it grows, and then in a few years go and acquire it. So I think it'll be great. For Clubhouse specifically, I would be curious to understand what their revenue model is going to be later on, because obviously they're probably raising capital. I'm not quite sure about, you know, their investor relations.
I'm sure so would they.
Yeah,
we're all waiting.
So I think the excitement is there, and right now they're acquiring a lot of people onto the platform. But I think we'll start seeing shifts when they start monetizing the platform, and I think, you know, at that point, it will start becoming interesting to see, are they going to stay for the long run, or they're going to just be a fad that then falls off?
Well, for those of you that are on the fence, come and join us in Clubhouse for our after show. And on one level or one hand, you're going to connect with all of us except poor Leslie, who is still on Android. I'm sorry.
I'm very happy with Android, though.
Well, you know, Android is coming, but also there's the idea of access and a different, you know, listening to us versus watching us. Be interesting to get your thoughts. I want to go on, and I won't go to you, Leslie, but certainly because you haven't been on. But what I will do is I want to show Monday's. Monday and have you actually respond to this first. Monday's CoronaByte, an incredible conversation with Dr. Alison Escalante, who wrote an article that basically said we've got depression all wrong. It's trying to save us. And we discussed the whole concept of immobilization, the numbing or dulling of pain, and how to deal with that. And we also spoke about the should storm, shoulding, and parental guilt, and also parental changes in how we parent. Amazing conversation. But this is actually the CoronaByte. And I asked her about self-care, and she went a little meta and evolved that into a conversation on self-compassion. There is one more S to discuss, and it's something we're hearing about a lot these days, and that is self-care.
Yeah, I actually want to pull it back a level and go a little meta. Self-care is just one more stressful thing unless you go up to self-compassion. So for many parents, self-care immediately becomes another should. You should also be taking care of yourself, right? And you should be less stressed. Self-compassion is amazing because it's so different from its predecessor, self-esteem, right? Self-esteem really ultimately is all about me. I'm wonderful and glorious and you love me. That's self-esteem and makes us feel like imposters. Self-compassion is simply the discipline of treating myself with the same basic respect and kindness that I would treat anyone else. And this is incredibly hard for people. And in our culture, it's especially hard for women.
So what do you think about that, Leslie? And also, I love this simple flip, right? Which is the golden rule says, treat others the way you would want to treat yourself. And self-compassion says, no, treat yourself the way you would treat others.
Well, when I heard that on Monday, and actually made me think immediately about my mother, who is a social worker, and really brought that to to her life. I mean, she grew up very poor and went back to college when she was in her 30s, ended up getting her master's, having a great career, and because of her work in the social working arena, it was all about helping people. But in that, and there were some really tough situations she had to work through. But in that, I saw her love herself and her, what she did, and she was proud of the things she'd accomplished. And I always felt, I never felt like I didn't have self-esteem or whatever. I mean, I always felt like very good about what I was doing, and I made my mistakes, but I don't dwell on them, and I feel very. I feel like I had a good role model, I guess. When I heard that, I immediately just thought of my mother and thought, great role model that I had. So I understand it. I know people around me that when I hear them, they struggle with, I'm not good enough kind of thing. And so I think I understand it. It's just, for me, it was not an experience that I feel like I had, because I had a very, I had a wonderful upbringing from my parental perspective. So.
And why do you think, that comment right at the end, that it's harder for women than it is men?
That's interesting, because I was also thinking about that. I think it was your show yesterday when we were talking about women. Just culturally, women are looked at differently across cultures, and even within our country, different cultural perspectives on women depending on what part of the country you're from, or what part, what southern, northern, whatever. I think there's different perspectives on what the role is. I think women we're doers. We take care of everything in the family. I was raised to be a doer, get things done, take care of things. I mean, I grew up where I learned how to cook, how to sew, how to garden, how to, and I do all these things, and to me, it's just part of my being. I take care of things, and always will. So I think that part of it is just how we're raised. Where you take care of your family and you get things done, and you have a lot on your shoulders, and you be a good sister, spouse, mother, daughter. It's just like all these roles are on our head, and I think women just take them very seriously and work very hard and kind of be good at all of them. So I'm not a philosopher as Tom is, but I get the feeling that it starts very early in our training for life.
Well, we're going to come to you for your segment in just a couple minutes, but Tom, that seems like a little bit of a layup for you, because you are a philosopher. What did Marcus Aurelius have to say about self-care, self-esteem, and self-compassion?
Oh, yeah. I mean, important stuff, right? And it's interesting because we get so externally oriented in our world now. We forget about the internal. We're all about the outer and not about the inner. And you mentioned Marcus Aurelius. Emperor of Rome, Seneca, great Roman lawyer, Epictetus, a freed slave who became the great philosophical liberator, all said, you got to start inside with self-care, and then you can make your proper mark in the world. To go running after external things without getting the internals right is probably to get everything wrong. Deep wisdom, always to start with cultivating yourself in the right kind of way, and then you can make the right kind of difference for other people.
Well, that is the philosopher's take. So, Leslie, you are up next. Your 5-minute slot begins now.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm keeping my eye on the clock, so I won't abuse the time.
Look, I've got the egg timer.
So, what I think about all the time is the sales process and selling, because that's my passion. And I try to define it. And I think, people say you're in sales, or we train salespeople, say, well, what is selling really about? It's about influencing and inspiring decisions. So we take the word selling out and replace it with that phrase. We're really in the job of influencing, inspiring decisions. I think that changes how we think about sales. And when you ask people, well, define a salesperson, what how would you describe? And that you get negative words typically is, people that are, yucky, or, people who are too pushy, or there's a lot of negativity. So I think about what we can do to rethink what the sales process is. And then also think about, there are many parts to it. So, and I haven't written a book, as many of my colleagues on this show have, but I have read a lot of books that have inspired me. And one that really got me thinking about this many years ago was Daniel Pink's book, which was To Sell Is Human. And if you think about it, we sell all the time. We sell to, professionally, we sell to our colleagues at work, we sell to even our children. So, we might be selling to our kids, why they should go clean their room, why they should, have breakfast, why they should, and I'm sure you did this, Joe, why you should study your Haftorah for your bar mitzvah, right? We are selling to our kids to do things, and we sell to our colleagues all the time. So, and the interesting part about that is if we understand what motivates people to make decisions, then we can sell to that. So that to me is a fascinating part about the work I do when I train sellers. It's not about the process, and the process is prospecting and nurturing leads and negotiating and closing. And I like to take the word negotiating out and replace it with persuading versus negotiating. But I think about we need to understand how our brains work in terms of decision making. There's a lot of science behind it. There's left brain, right brain. There's cognitive biases that play into decision making. If we start to understand that, then we might get better at understanding how we're going to influence and inspire people to make a decision. And then you look at the sales process. It's not just the process. It's complicated, and it's gotten more complicated because marketing technology has made it more complicated. It used to be buyers beware. Now it's seller beware, because buyers come to the process well educated. The technology is given, there's a lot of marketing technology to find content, to download what you need, to get reviews, to listen to influencers. We don't need salespeople anymore. So what's the role of the salesperson?
You gave us so much to digest there, and you clearly must have loved Thursday's show, not Thursday's show, Wednesday's show with Tom Martin. One of the things that I used to say in my presentations was, people don't like to be sold to, but they love to buy. We love buying. We love shopping. We love Black Friday. We love buying, but we just hate to be sold to. Mm-hmm. Nick, a question for you. You always see sales and marketing at odds with one another, the oil and the water, these two departments that don't seem to necessarily work together. What is the marketer's take on what Leslie just said?
Well, I keep thinking about what Leslie said. First, I'd love to sell as human, and it's time to reread that one. But I was thinking about the brand, actually, of sales. And it's funny because I feel like we aren't big fans of it. We, call me a business development specialist or something else, or don't call it sales, call it outreach and engagement. And we really go out of our way to not associate ourselves with sales, kind of as an extension of what you were just saying, of we love to buy, we don't like to be sold to, we don't even want that label on us. And yet, like Leslie said, it's happening everywhere. But the label and the brand and everything else that goes with it, we have a big problem with. So there is kind of a disconnect, and I don't know that I have any great wisdom on marketing and sales not getting along, other than it's a disconnect that is bad to have.
I want to Leslie, I want you to, if you are comfortable, retell that amazing story that you told in the after show about an experience with a client.
Right. Well, we were talking about Tom was talking about long-term relationships, and some of his clients, it took him 20 years to get a client. And I had commented that most of my business for the last 2 years, I guess started happening before COVID hit, but was almost all of my new clients that I have now were repeat clients that I had done business with 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 12 years ago. They're coming back, and they're coming back, I believe, because of the trust factor. And the story was, I actually even had a client that I had trained twice before. I got the RFP for a third round of training, and I was pretty sure I was going to get the gig. They knew me, I knew them. There were a lot of institutional knowledge about their people, their process, their products. And then when I didn't get it, I was shocked. And so I called up my client. I said, I don't understand. I've worked with you. What happened? And he said, well, so-and-so got the bid. And I said, well, why? And I teach this as well. So you always have to ask why you got a sale and why you didn't get a sale. So I said, well, why did I get the sale? What did they do better than me? What was the story? And it turned out that my competitor had got a hold of an intern in the department and found out how much each of the other people bidding on this training were paying. And he said, well, I'll charge you half of what Laredo Group is charging you, and to get the business. So whatever they're charging, I'll just do half. And they said, okay. So they hired him. And when I found that out, I called the head of HR and the CRO, and I said, look, you just hired the person who's going to teach your people do exactly what you don't want them to do, which is to sell on price. As soon as you get a price, objection, then they're going to capitulate or say, okay, and they don't understand the price value. I said, I know what my value is, and I know I'm worth what I pay. I know why, I know I'm the most expensive trainer out there. There's a reason why my clients all come back to me year after year. And they had signed a contract with this guy, and they ended up canceling the contract. I'm not sure how they did it. And they brought me back in, and they said, you're right. We were going to hire someone who was going to teach our people to sell the way he sold. So my takeaway is, I always tell people, and I do it all the time on phone calls and even in emails, I say, I practice what I teach. I do it all the time. And so there's a couple little, things that I'm constantly doing, and people go, yeah, we really do that. Every email ends with an ask. Every call has a summary. We talk about reformulating. I think we talked about that with Tom. Reformulating, reframing the discussions. I mean, all these things are things that I do constantly, and that's what I teach. But it was really that that experience of being able to get a client back. So I know it a little long in that description, but it was interesting.
Thank you, Leslie. We're going to move on from the art of the close to the art of conversation, and not just conversation, but a very specific time and place in conversation when the magic happens. This was Minter Dial and Tuesday's CoronaByte.
You were talking about conversations where they come up in unexpected moments. I've talked to many therapists how actually the closing minutes of the therapy session is actually where things happen. I'm getting up. Oh, listen, Joe, thank you for having me. Listen, how do I pay? Oh, there's one other thing. That's where the thing that happens, the big change experience unexpectedly, because the tension's off. I'm in another mode, and all of a sudden, so maybe that's also the fifth wall as well.
In my olden pre-pandemic days of consulting, qualitative interviews, it's when you stop the recording that suddenly the executive you're talking to starts to be themselves or just flourishes and opens up. It's those dying moments of conversation that the real magic comes out. I absolutely loved that bite, and it's so true. We have this all the time with our Zoom after show. Yeah. The moment that I stop the recording, I'm like, why didn't I keep it going? That was gold, Jerry. That was gold.
Well, you remember the old TV show, Joseph, Columbo, the detective, right? And it was at the end of the interview with a potential potential wrongdoer there, suspect, that he would turn around and start to walk away and say, oh, one more thing. And that was always the magic moment, right? That was always the magic moment because the guy's let down his guard. And we have to remember that if we want to make the most of the conversations we have with people, make something happen so they let down their guard. That's when the magic happens.
And the other thing that goes on in that show is that Peter Falk would always do something or say something slightly wrong, and people hate things being wrong. So he got people more engaged by actually purposely saying something wrong because people would correct it. So the bad guy would correct it, and he would get more clues to why. Who was the person that was needed to be
very interesting
arrested.
I think Joey Dumont is calling it the Hawthorne effect. I'm going to have to go and do some research. By the way, I feel like Howard Stern does that on purpose as well. He's done all his research, and he always talk about something that I believe he intentionally knows is wrong. For his guests then to jump in and correct him and feel like they have the upper hand when the master puppeteer, Mr. Howard Stern, knows exactly what's going on. Kuda is smiling. Kuda, you want to respond to that and then go straight into your 5-minute segment?
No, I think it's actually smart. I've been in meetings where that has happened, where someone asks a question and they already know the answer, but they want you to kind of like, say it and then feel like, you're the smart one. So I've seen it happen, and it's a good approach. I want to add one thing before I jump in. So around the selling piece, I think you should really think about it as kind of like exchanging in value, because that's what happens when you're selling, right? You have something that someone might feel is of value to them, and they're willing to give you, the $20 or $100 in exchange for that thing. So if you think of it as an exchange of value as opposed to selling, I think that could help a lot of people to then actually demonstrate what is the value that you have that can benefit someone, versus to say like, hey, I want to close this sale per se. So anyway, my thought of the day.
And wait, before you come up with the thought of the day, we got to say you were meant to be on the show last week, but you came up with the lamest, lousiest excuse ever. Something about being on some television program called The View. And I was offended. Like, how on earth would you give preference to The View over Corona TV? It makes no sense. But I just want to say congratulations to a well-deserved appearance. None-believable is going none-believable places.
Thank you. It wasn't a lame, but it was an honest excuse. We were on The View, and we experienced a huge surge in sales as we were hoping. And with that comes some, logistical issues that you need to resolve. But we were able to resolve them. Cookies were shipped out. Customers are happy, so we're happy as well. So thank you so much, Joey, for congrats.
My only question is, did Google cancel the order? Because apparently there's something going on with cookies in them. But anyway, I digress. Kuda, your 5 minutes starts now.
Yes. So today is March 5th, and it's Employee Appreciation Day. And, my thought is, why does it have to be one specific day? Number one, why can't it be every day? But I think what we need to be thinking about is people who have teams or, colleagues who help us achieve that North Star or vision that we cast as, entrepreneurs and leaders, is what could we do for these team members, on a day like this to really appreciate and show them that, we love and we care for them and we appreciate everything that we do. We were talking real quick about, being on The View and experiencing, huge surges that really cramped the system. If it wasn't for the team, right, around me, we wouldn't have been able to serve our customers, right? Because, we were seeing more customer service requests come in, more orders coming in that need to be shipped. So my thought for today is, like I said, number one, why shouldn't it be Employee Appreciation Day every day? But also, number two, I'm curious to understand from the others, how are you commemorating this day and, engaging your team members, given it's a day set to really appreciate them?
By the way, I feel there should be a streaming TV host appreciation day, but maybe that's just me. What do the rest of you think in terms of this idea that we don't need a specific day, quite frankly, not even just for employees, but for anyone, right? Mother's Day, Valentine's Day. I got a heart behind me. What do you guys think?
Well, I actually think it's important to have days that we single out, birthdays, holidays, anniversary, the days special, making days special. And, if it's every day, it somehow loses its specialness. So maybe it's not every day, Kuda, maybe it's once a month or once a quarter. But I actually think having some time allows us to put our brains around and do things that we would not normally do in terms of expressing that appreciation. So I like the idea. I agree with you. We should show appreciation every day, but the acknowledgement in a big, in the bigger picture, like buying cookies for all my employees, maybe that's something that I would do regularly, but not every day. So
I think Kuda believes that you should be buying cookies for your employees every day.
I think so. Yeah, I'm all for that.
I'm not going to turn down cookies.
So I've decided that I'm going to send JAFFE coin to all my guests to say thank you for coming on the show, but maybe I should be sending Nunbelievable.
Yeah, that would be a nice thing.
I mean, I think if we had to just take a step back, there's no question that you shouldn't need a day to be in touch, in tune, and connected to people that count. I do think when it comes to employee appreciation, I would push back on that because, and I would basically say, let's scrap Employee Appreciation Day and make sure that we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. But for the most part, you know, this is something, a commitment to our talent that really should be a cultural imperative. And the good companies, the winners, will be ones that ensure Employee Appreciation Day happens every day. I don't think anyone will disagree with that. And if you do, I'll mute you.
Well, I have the cop-out solopreneur answer that I don't have any employees to do nice things for, or anyone getting me cookies. But one thing I think of, seeing Jeff's comment in the chat on because Hallmark says so, and so many of these things are called the greeting card holidays or and whatnot. And but one thing I think, kind of as an offshoot, that kind of like Leslie said, that having a day reminds us of the intentionality of it, and also being in this weird window of time where it's hard to do anything, where sometimes it's just like, oh, we got to make Christmas, but we got to make the most crazy birthday with the drive-by thing and everything else. And, you know, seeing, not to sound like a Valentine Scrooge, but seeing Joseph's balloons reminded me of our Valentines this year. And we were like, oh, we usually do nice things for the kids. We just don't have the energy. And what are we gonna? Maybe we'll have a nice meal. We'll do this. But then at the last minute, kind of, I have some paper here in my office. I thought, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write something to each of our 5 kids. And I'm going to try to not make it the same thing for all 5 of them. I'm going to try to say something interesting here on this Valentine's Day. And I think those kind of points of connection can be good, because it's easy to get into a rut in anything, even independent of COVID. It's easy to fall into the mindset of, okay, I get the card, I get the balloons, I get the flowers, I do the thing, rinse, lather, repeat. So I think, beyond when we observe it, on to Kuda's point of couldn't it be every day, but I also think of the how, and kind of breaking free of ruts that we get into, and finding something special to do.
Robert says, I wish Sunday was still a day of rest, with family, a meal together, a hike, a bike ride, a board game. We'll actually get to that point, I think, right at the end with our Corona question. But speaking of intentionality, Wednesday, I love this, is going back to sales. Tom Martin was a guest on the show, and he introduced us to the 5 P's of great selling. But specifically, we were talking about proximity, and not just proximity, but a new word that I learned, which is propinquity. I learned a new word, which is propinquity, right? The law of propinquity states that the greater the physical or psychological proximity is between people, the greater the chance they will form friendships or romantic relationships.
But the key thing that separates propinquity from proximity is that what the research on propinquity says is that each time somebody comes into contact with you, they have to have the opportunity to learn something new about you. So, the way I explain it is, if you go on a date with somebody and you have a lovely conversation, and you say, wow, this is great, let's go on another date. So you go on a second date, you have the exact same conversation, word for word. You might still have a lovely second date. You might go on a third date. You might keep dating and going to dinner, but you're never going to actually advance to a place where you're going to become, really good friends, romantically inclined, or anything like that.
I love that, because not only does it talk about sales and consultative selling, personal selling, but also about relationships. A wonderful point about always bringing something new to the table. If you are watching on Facebook, just a reminder, next week we're going to do a little bit of an experiment and really focus on YouTube and LinkedIn. So I won't be sharing on Facebook. So come on over to YouTube if you want to experience CoronaBytes like the one you have just seen. Mr. Tom Morris, you get to be the closer today, the final countdown, the final speaker. What say you, my friend?
Well, I was going to talk about a totally different topic. And then 2 nights ago, I got to be part of a Zoom call. It's the super smart people across professions from all around the world that Zoom once a month. And somehow I accidentally got sent an invitation, so I get to be part of it. Sounds like CoronaTV to me. But the lady who was giving the short talk that we all respond to, she asked everybody to take 3 minutes of silence and go to the internet and look up the name Mary Parker Follett. 2 L's, 2 T's. Mary Parker Follett. None of us had ever heard of her. This lady was born, this woman was born in 1868 and died in 1933. And she's the mother of management theory, of leadership theory. Have you ever heard of Mary Parker Follett? Everybody hears of, Frederick Taylor as the father of management theory. Turns out Mary Parker Follett was much, much better. She talked about all the stuff that we're starting to talk about now. She was a social worker like Leslie's mom. She worked in the tenements of Boston, and she learned the power of values and diversity and creativity and collaborative intelligence. And she wrote all her books and articles about this for the business world and for democracy. And it's just now that people are starting to rediscover this powerful woman's voice that got everything right before Taylor, in his mechanistic view of business, got everything wrong. And now she was talking about the genuinely human side of things. So the lady presenting this, Julie Huffaker, whose company is called Deeper and Funner Consulting, I think. Julie said she had worked with a company, a catering company, and it had been an authoritarian, almost a dictatorial, this old guy who ran the company. And his young employees came to him one day and said, look, we don't feel appreciated. We don't feel listened to. We don't feel like we're valued at all. And either you're going to change things or we're going to leave. And he started to get really mad, but he realized they're his top people who are saying this, and he doesn't want to lose them. So he says, okay, you guys figure out how to redo the way we work around here, and I'll sign off on it. And they said, okay. So they brought it all down, horizontal organization made of teams. Each team had a designated member that was a part of a council. They were going to lay out their mission, their vision, their values. And one day, one of the employees, everything seemed to be going great. And one of the employees wrote up a contract and made a mistake and left out something. It cost the company well over $1,000 for this mistake. And it was a small company. So the guy who was the founder, the owner, he gets really mad. He goes to the young woman's desk who made the mistake, and he starts just cussing her out. He's angry, he's red, he's sweating, and she just is very calm, and she points to a chart on the wall, and she said, is this number 3? And he turns and looks, and number 3 says, we respect each other in all ways. And he said, well, are you doing number 7? He points at number 7. We take responsibility for all our actions. And she said, I'm really trying to. I'm really sorry for the mistake, and I'm trying to do something about it. I'm trying really hard. Are you trying really hard with number 3? And all of a sudden, he laughed out loud. And he said, you got me there. I am so sorry. And I was thinking about, what are values? The word value, we want to bring value. We want to be of value. We want to be considered to be good value, high value. What is a value? So it comes from the Latin word valeri. It's a verb that means to be strong, to be worthy, to be well. And I thought, wow, value is always about worth. It's about strength. It's about well-being somehow. It's funny, if you would have asked me, a month ago, what are values, our own values? because we have two different uses of the word, right? We want to give value, we want to provide value, but we have our own personal values. We have our own corporate value. What's the relationship between those two uses of the same word? Our values are our most basic and universal commitments to what we see as giving us strength and well-being. Our values are our most basic and universal commitments to what we think will give us strength and well-being as people, as businesses. Our virtues, rooted in another Latin word, virtu, which meant power, prowess. Our virtues are just those habits or dispositions of character we have for living out our values well. Now, so anyway, a guy from Madrid came to see me, college student. He wanted to have breakfast and talk philosophy. So he starts out breakfast with this, the opener that people from other countries tend to do. What is wisdom? He says to me. And, are the pancakes here any good? No. What is wisdom? And I say, my usual answer, it's embodied insight for living. He says, okay, well, that makes sense. It's not just head knowledge, it's heart knowledge. And then I think for a minute, and I say something I'd never said before. Wisdom is guidance and guardrails. And as a Spanish speaker, he didn't know the word guardrails. He says, what are guardrails? I said, you're driving on a mountain road, twisty turns, and there's these metal railings that keep your car from going over the side that protect you. Oh, guardrails. Yes, I know guardrails. I said, wisdom is guidance and guardrails. The guidance points us forward, and the guardrails keep us from going wrong as we try to get there. Most modern wisdom about business and life is all about guidance, but very little has been about guardrails. Well, when this lady, Julie, tells us a story about Mary Parker Follett, and when she tells us a story about this little business called Tasty Catering, where the values were on the wall, I thought to myself, wait a minute. Values, yes, they're commitments, but they're also guidance and guardrails. Our values are our guidance and our guardrails. They were being used in both ways in that little story. And I thought, well, that's the same as wisdom. So there's a connection between wisdom and values I had never seen before. It's funny because in the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Proverbs, wisdom is talked about all the time. Now, if you talk to people about wisdom in the modern world, they're going to think wisdom is something really elusive. It's something really rare. It's something really maybe you need every now and then. No. It's supposed to be the soundtrack of our lives. And when you don't have wisdom as the soundtrack of your life, you have foolishness as the cacophonic soundtrack of your life. Choose wisdom instead. You get the guidance, you get the guardrails, you get the values to make your value and bring your value to everything you do.
Did you notice
I'm sticking to it.
Did you notice the subtlety of how I relegated you down to the bottom for a where is that red card? Where is the red card that you blew right through your 5-minute segment? Let's end with a CoronaByte. On Thursday's show, Tracy Lovatt, speaking of wisdom, speaking of values, guidance, and guardrails, and what it is to be a female company.
A few years ago, after we started the company, I had an anthropologist who worked for me full-time, which was both the most invigorating and exhausting of experiences. His insight and his thinking was fascinating and fantastic, and took a long time to kind of unravel and figure out. And people hated me in the company for having him on staff because he confused everybody. But I remember when he left, he said to me, remember one thing about this company. Remember that it's intuitive, and remember that it's a female company. I didn't really understand what he meant, but what he meant was intuitive. And he felt as an anthropologist that we were more intuitive. So we've tried to do that.
I love that idea. You know, in many languages, words are either male or female. And in this particular case, literally, there can be a company of females and female founders. But in this case, a company that embodies female values and beliefs. I just think that's a beautiful concept. Robert Collins says, nice closeout, Tom. The story was worth the time it took to deliver it. Glenn says, good stuff. And I also want to thank Glenn because he just, while it was probably donating it to Tom, but I got some JAFFE donated to me by Glenn. Glenn, you were the first person to donate live during a show since my coin launched about a week ago. So thank you for the donation, the tip to Corona TV. It will go straight towards the kids' college fund. So I appreciate that. Tom, we will discuss that wonderful soliloquy in the Clubhouse after show. By the way, you will notice that I put little apostrophes around PhD, and the reason why I did that is I heard in Clubhouse this week someone said it was a beautiful story that actually Scott Monty told, but he said about a janitor at Frito-Lay that actually came up with the idea behind Flaming Hot Cheetos, and he always said I had a PhD, which stood for poor, hungry, and determined.
Well, there you go.
So, I think it's a real compliment. You have a double real PhD, but I think you have maybe not the poor, maybe not the hungry, but you sure as hell are determined.
And
so,
if I could say one more thing, it was wonderful. As I was about to finish my soliloquy, Joseph texted me, "You're about to get muted." And I said, "That's what they said to Socrates." I finally made it.
I would never mute you on this show, but in the after show, it's fair game, my friend. We are going to end off, and we're going to try and get into Clubhouse at 1 p.m. On the button. But I'm going to ask my wonderful, wonderful guests, my friends. You have become my friends. To end with two things. One is the Corona question is describe a good day in your life in 30 seconds or less, Tom. And in addition to that, give us whatever you want to promote. This is your time now. How can people find you? Anything going on right now in your world that you want to share with people, starting with Nick Westergaard.
Well, as far as a good day in my life, I love Robert's description in our chat where he says a day of rest, a family meal together, a bike ride, a hike, a board game. All of those kind of things have made me happy. It's been hard when it's been cold here in Iowa, but the weather's turning and we're able to get out a little bit more. As far as something to check out, my weekly podcast is the On Brand Podcast, and you can find that at onbrandpodcast.com.
Awesome. Leslie Laredo, describe a good day in your life. So what would you like to promote?
Oh, okay. Well, easy for me is good days, get up in the morning and do some gardening and planting. And I have a lot of fruit trees and succulents in my yard here. So I get to pick bananas, mangoes, avocados, and have that fun. And then the afternoon or evening is do cooking. I love to cook. So gardening and cooking. And so that's a great day. If I get to the beach in between those two, that would be fun as well. To promote, just Leslie at academydm.com is my email. AcademyDM for Academy of Digital Media.com. Great to go there. You could find out about all the courses that we teach. So.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming in. It was good to have you back on these community shows. Mr. Kuda Biza, he's almost too big to come on Corona TV. The head is swelling. I'm just kidding. Kuda, describe a good day in your life, my friend.
Yeah, so I grew up with the philosophy, good, better, best. So since the word you used is good, any day that I'm above the ground is a good day.
and for some reason it says faux founder. There is nothing faux about you, my friend. Let's just correct that for you.
All right. And then something to promote, obviously, we have our cookies, right? We just launched a new shortbread collection, which I think both Tom and Joe, you should try since you tried our initial ones, and Nick and Leslie should also try. But we're super excited about what we're doing with Unbelievable. So if you could go buy a box, that would be great. We have a 1-for-1 model. So for every cookie we sell, we donate a meal, and we're able to do that by partnering with nonprofit organizations like Feeding America and World Vision. So eat a cookie, feed the hungry.
Yeah, that's good.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mr. Tom Morris, and you know what we're going to do? I'm going to just ask you to hold on for 1 second, because I'm going to open up the room in Clubhouse.
Oh, good.
And as people start to come into the room, they can hear your answer to the question. Describe a good day in your life, Tom Morris.
Well, some unbelievable cookies would really help a good day, but also love, wisdom, music, sunshine, and always a good book to be reading. And if I have to promote anything, in addition to that new currency, the JAFFE, which is the hottest thing in the world right now, I want to promote, get a good book. And if you can't find a good one, there's always one of mine, like The Oasis Within, which describes a lot of good days in the desert in Egypt in 1934 that will make your days even better.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Tom Morris. You know, it is always a pleasure, whether you're printing one of your amazing books. You are really one of the smartest, most considerate, profoundest, and nicest philosophers and happiest philosophers in the world.
You get so many JAFFE coins for that. It's unbelievable.
My wonderful guest, there is nothing more. Let's hop into Clubhouse. But there is nothing more to say except...
you are Chuck Norris approved.
Go, and I will see you guys in Clubhouse. Except for you, Leslie Laredo. Get an iPhone. Love you, love you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.